Hello and welcome back to the Complete Web Dev series. Let me move my microphone. I always do that. Let me try that again. Hello and welcome back to the Complete Web Dev series. In this chapter, we are working on React.js. In the last chapter, we built a Node.js server. So hopefully you followed along with that, or you have gone and set that up on your machine. And what we're going to do in this video specifically is our application needs to do to make Ajax request, or it needs to make requests to our API that we built in Node.js. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a couple helper functions to help us make requests, whether that's a get request, a post, a put, delete, whatever. We need to be able to make requests to our API so that we can get information and we can our front end can use it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the built-in fetch API. Now we could use something like Axios or something like that, but I figured we would build our own Ajax helper functions that wrap around fetch to make fetch just a little more user-friendly in our application. So please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know if you are enjoying this series, and we'll keep going. So here we'll switch over here, and I'm going to create a new branch, and I need to see what branches I have. So this will be V5. So I'm going to do get checkout -B to create a new branch here, and it will be V5. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a get push set upstream of origin V5. All right, now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this other tab and start. I'm going to do an npm start here. And once this is up and running, it will go ahead and open up where we left off in the last video, which is localhost 3000, port 3000 here. But we're not going to be really doing much in the interface on this video because we're going to be in the code most of the time here. So let's do a couple things. One, let's talk a little bit about environment files. And so what we're going to do here is let's add in the root of our application. I'm going to click on this file here, and let's just add a new file called .env, and let's add another one called .env.development.local. Okay, and I spelled that wrong, so let me rename it. .env.development.local. There we go, and then go ahead and open up the getignore. And you'll notice that getignore has added the .env.development.local, and all these any .local env files are not going to be added to our Git repository, and so we're going to be using this to set some environment variables when npm start is run, and then live we will have another environment file here. So let's go ahead and set up an environment variable. We're probably just going to have one, but let's call this React _app_API. And we'll set that equal to http://localhost. Now our node server is running on port 5000. And so we will do that just like that. So now we're going to use this. So this is in our environment.development.local, so that when our local app runs, it's going to connect to the localhost port 5000. If you were going to do this live, what you would do is in the environment variables that we set up there, you can set up the same exact React app API, and we'll set that equal to whatever your domain would be. In this case, I'm just going to do something like swappy.dev/API / there. Sorry about my heater. So on live, this would be your domain, or however the application is going to call the domain for your API. That would be your Node API on live. But on local development, we're setting it to localhost port 5000. Okay, and then the getignore is already set up for that. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and close down these, And then what we want to do is let's just test that. Let's go to our source and we'll go to app-index.js here. And right here, just replace this username here with env.process.react app API and save that. Let me look at one more thing real quick. Let me see, make sure I have that syntax correct there. I'm sorry, I have that backwards. It's actually process.env, oops, lowercase there, .env.react app API. So let's go ahead and just check that. I just want to make sure it shows up, and it is not showing up. So let's go ahead and go to the terminal here and Control-C, and let's do an npm start again. Now that we're starting it up, hopefully it will grab from that. Yep, now you can see it is, once I rebooted the application with that new environment variable in the .env.development.local, you can see that we have this HTTP localhost port 5000. And if you have that, you are good to go. I'm going to close down this app-index.js. We don't really need that so much right now. What we're going to do is let's create inside of source here, let's create a new folder, and let's create a folder called helpers. And inside that folder, let's create a new file here called ajax.js. We're going to create all of our Ajax functions here in this ajax.js. And so let's create the first function here. Is going to be our most complex, and we're going to be using fetch to do this. So we're going to export a function. And we're not going to use default for this. We're going to just export a function so we have access to it, and it's going to be called run fetch. Okay, and this is going to take some parameters. The first one's going to be URL. The second will be a method, and we're going to pass it some data, and then we're going to have a callback function that can be run once we get the fetch back. So then what we do is inside this function, let's set up a constant called domain, and this domain is going to be process.env.react app API. So it's going to grab that from the environment variables. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is set up some options. So we'll do const options, and that's going to be an object here, and we'll set method equal to method, which will be passed in. Okay, and then we're going to set some headers here. So fetch takes some headers, and that will also be an object. And so what we'll do here is do accept, and what we want to accept here is application JSON, and then we're going to also set the content dash type. We want that to also be application JSON. And then outside of the options here, let's see, what do we want to do? We're going to have some JWT tokens at some point that's going to be returned from our backend. So let's go ahead and check for that. And so what we're going to do, let's just put a thing here. We're going to say add authorization header if the user is logged in. So what's going to happen here is once the user is logged in, we're going to be getting an authorization header back, or a token back. And so let's go ahead and set that. We're going to do const token, and we're going to set that in local storage. So we could say token is equal to local storage.get item, and we're going to call that user JWT token. And then we're going to say if that token exists in local storage, then what we're going to do is we're going to add to our options header here. So we're going to say options.headers, and then we're going to add an authorization header, and and we're going to set that equal to, and we'll use a string literal here, so backticks, and we'll just do a bearer token, so bearer space, and then we'll add our token in just like that. Okay, so what this is doing is it's going to get any sort of JWT token that's set in local storage, and then it's going to add a headers thing here inside this headers that'll be called, it'll look like this, it'll be like authorization, and then that authorization will be something like bearer, and then it'll have some sort of hash here, that'll be our token. Okay, so we're only going to set that though if they have a JWT token set in local storage. The next thing that we want to do is we are going to do a fetch return, fetch. Now fetch is a method that's built into your browser already, so we don't need to install anything for that. But we're going to use it, and we're going to say fetch, and then we're going to use our domain, and we're going to concatenate onto that domain our URL that's passed into this run fetch function. And then the second option that it takes is the options here that we pass in. And then what we're going to do is we are going to do a promise. So we're going to say .then, and the .then is going to take an async await function. So response, and then we'll do curly brackets here because it's going to pass response into that .then, and we're going to say if response.ok. What we want to do then is return response.json. Okay, just like that. Else what we want to do is we want to, oops. Well, we'll do an else if here. So else if the response from our API has a response.status equal to 422. Then what we want to do is we want to return response.json like that, and then we're going to pass that to a then, and then that's going to take errors, and we are going to return status equal to response.status. Why did it add that? Response.status. We're going to have success equal to false, and then we're going to add into our errors the errors that were passed to us. Okay, so this is going to be kind of returned from the Node.js server with a 422 there. And then what we want to do is else, what we want to do here is we're just going to throw an exception. So we'll throw a new error, and that will be the response status text. Okay. Then what we're going to do is outside of, let's see, we're going to chain on another then. So we have this .then, and let's do another one here. So instead of this, we're going to do another .then. And this will be our response that comes back from this right here. So it'll be in JSON format. So we're going to return the response here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check if there's a callback. So we'll say if type of callback is equal to a function. Then what we want to do is we're going to return the callback function, and we're going to pass the response into that. So if you add a callback right here, we want to, when it's all done with, we want to call that callback function. Else what we want to do, if there's no callback function given, or if it's not defined, we're going to return the response. So this run function, its main purpose, what it's going to do is set up some options. It's going to build our URL based upon our domain that's coming from our environment variables and the URL that's passed in. And then it's going to get the response back from the API call. If it's response.ok, then it's going to return response.json, which will then chain into here. It'll get passed in. And if we have a callback, we're going to call the callback. Else, we're just going to return that response so we can use it. The other thing here, let me see. we haven't added this data into our call yet. So if we're posting or doing a put or pull patch or something like that, we're going to need to send data along with this fetch. So what we're going to do there is, let's see, above right here where we added the authorization token. Oops. Let's go ahead and add another thing here, and we're going to say, hey, if the method is not equal to get, and if the method is not equal to delete, then what we want to do is we're going to do options, and we're going to build into this options here. We're going to do options dot body is equal to, and maybe we have to do it like this, options body is equal to, and then we're going to do JSON dot stringify our data. So this data is going to come in as an object, and then we'll stringify that and add it here to our options body, as long as it's not a GET request or a delete request. Let me get a drink of water really quick. All right, so this is a pretty simple function, and it's using the fetch API that's built into our browsers. But I want to make it even simpler, so we're going to add a couple wrapper functions down here. So the first one that we want is a Json Post function, and that will take a URL, and then it's going to take some data, and then it's going to take a callback function. And then what we're going to do here is just return our run fetch function that we just created. So we'll pass in URL, and then the method that it gets is post, and then we'll pass data down and then our callback down. So this function doesn't do much other than it adds this post, and so a lot of these functions are going to be exactly the same. So let's do we're going to export another function that we're going to call JSON get. Again, it's going to take a URL and a callback. It doesn't need data because it doesn't use it, and we'll return our run fetch method, and we'll just pass in URL, get for our method. We'll just do an empty object here because we don't need anything, and then our callback. All right, so we're gonna do a couple more. Let's just do export another function. We'll call it JSON patch. It gets a URL, data, and callback, and we'll return our run fetch method here, and it'll take the URL. We'll do a patch, and then it will take our data, oops, and our callback. And the last one that we're going to use here, and you can add more if you want, but we'll do a JSON delete, and that will just take a URL and a callback. So we're going to return our run fetch, and we'll do URL delete as our method, and then we'll pass an empty object. We don't have to pass anything there because it doesn't really matter. And there we go. So these methods here, we're primarily going to be using these four in our React application that will just call this run fetch, and it's just a wrapper so that we don't have to pass this method every single time. We can just call run our JSON post or JSON get, JSON patch, or JSON delete, depending on what we're trying to do in the application. All right, how much time have I spent on this video? Let's see. We're at 19 minutes. I'm trying to decide if we should go ahead and build out the form helper, because I want to build out a class that we can use to make dealing with our forms and the response from this Ajax a little bit easier and nicer to work with. But we're about 20 minutes in, so I think let's just try something out here. Let's just see if we get some sort of response back from our API. Let me try let me see here. I'm gonna try email and password, and let's try to send something to our login form. So let's go ahead and open a new thing here, and I'm gonna navigate to my API. Oops. And then here we'll just do npm start, and then it opens our port 5000, and it runs the our node server that we built in the last chapter is up and running now. And let's go ahead and let's test this out. So go to app index here, and what I want to do is when this function for app index is called, let's just go ahead and make an API call. So let's at the top here just go ahead and import, and we'll have to use curly brackets here. Let's import a Json Post, and we'll do from and let's see, we want to do it from helpers Ajax. Okay, and then right here let's go ahead and do a Json Post, and this is just testing this, by the way. This is not where we're going to do this code, but we want to, for the URL, we're going to post this to auth login. What we want to pass is our email and our password. So I'm going to create an object here, and I'm just going to do email is going to be curtis@freeskills.com, and then we'll do password, and I'm just going to pass in password there. And then for the last one, let's do a callback here. So let's do a response, and all I'm going to do here is just console log our response from the node server, like that. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. I'm going to go ahead and inspect, click on network, or we can look at the console. So we have a problem here. The server responded with a 404 status here, so let me refresh. Click on this, and route is not found. So let's check out why route is not found. In order to do that, I need to, let's look at our node package here, and cd API. Let me open that up in the code editor here. And let's look at our routes. So we have users, to-dos, contacts. And I bet you, yeah, we changed it to users / login. So instead of passing this to auth, I'm going to do users, like that. And now you can see we are no longer getting a 404. Instead, we're getting success false back with errors that password, something's wrong with my email or password. And that's because we don't actually have a user yet in our database. So this is actually looking good. This is what I expected to get back. So because this is working, and if you look at the headers here, it is making the call to the localhost 5000, and then it adds that user login to it. And then if you look at headers here, we have our content type is set to application JSON, and then it accepts the application JSON back, and you can see that our payload, we passed email and password along with it. Obviously those aren't found in our database, which is fine. And then the response that we got back from the server, we just console logged out. So our run fetch method is working correctly with our Json Post. So I'm happy with that. So now that we have that done, we can go ahead and I'm going to leave this here for you guys to see too, and we'll remove it in the next video. But also, instead of your username, it'll be your API domain is here. So you can see our API domain there. It is calling this twice every time, but I'm not too worried about that right now because we're not going to be doing it this way. But you can see that our that we are getting back the correct information that we expected. And if we look here, we can actually see the post come in on user's login, and that it took 13 milliseconds here to respond. So that's really, really fast. I'm not too worried about that. All right, guys. Well, I hope that's helpful. We built out in this video a Ajax helper function that can help us with post and get and delete and patch requests using the default fetch API that's built into the browsers. With that, I think we'll call it a video, and in the next video we are going to build out a form helper class that can handle updating. You know, we talked about the controlled and uncontrolled form elements in the last video. We want to build out a form class that we're going to use to update our errors. If we get some errors back from the back end, we're going to be doing our post and everything when they click submit. So we're going to handle all of that in the next video with a special class we're going to build up. And once we have that, we're going to be able to do things like create users and log in and build up our forms in that way. Once we have that, we're going to make some cool, interesting decisions to find out if our users are logged in. If they are logged in, we're going to go ahead and show them part of the application that they can only see if they're logged in. Else, we're going to make them either register or log in. All right, well, I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know if you learned anything in this video, and I will see you guys later.